Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This is directed by George Miller. It is a tough act to follow when your previous entry in the Mad Max saga is Fury Road, which came out in 2015. I recently revisited the film in preparation for this one, and whether that film connects with you on an emotional level or not, I think it's really hard to deny. That film is just a gnarly masterwork. And out of that film, of course, came the character Furiosa, who at the time was played by Charlize Theron. Those who follow me regularly on this channel know that I tend to resist female action heroes, especially these days, just because they rarely feel convincing to me, especially physically, as a domineering presence. And emotionally, there's typically, some way they have to exploit the gender in some form, but I feel like in Furiosa's case, she was treated like a proper character with proper respect. She was never sexualized, but she didn't feel like a Mary Sue either, and unfortunately we have abundance of that particular stereotype in Hollywood these days. Furiosa to me was cool. She was intense, she was powerful, and she was free maybe of a lot of those soft feminine aspects, but at the same time I don't think she ever lost being a woman. Her femininity still feels intact to me. She's not a statement, she's a character, and that feels a lot less condescending to me as an audience member. So knowing that the next entry in the Mad Max story would be a Furiosa origin story, I could dig it. I was excited for it. But hearing Anya Taylor-Joy was going to take over the role as a young Furiosa made me very happy, just because I think Anya, she's got great eyes, obviously. It's like staring into some desert sunset. And I don't mean necessarily from an exotic perspective, but just she has this cinematic quality to her, very feline-esque. But most importantly, she has, the fiery rage, or the capability to have that fiery rage in her eyes, which, makes sense with the name Furiosa. And I think Anya Taylor-Joy embodies the fury in the name Furiosa a lot more than Charlize Theron does. Now, that does make sense to a degree, because obviously Furiosa in this is supposed to be all sound and blazing vengeance here, because she's younger, she's untamed. Whereas Charlize is doing maybe more of a chiseled, more mature version of the character, which, it's going to be maybe more subtle, and she has a maybe more jaded sense of weariness. And again, that's totally appropriate for that particular part of the story. But Anya is very nuanced fury in this film, I feel like, and she does a fantastic job of helping to carry all of this calamity, all of this operatic carnage on her back. But I won't say that she is the sole emotional center of the story. I think she has a lot of help all around her from all kinds of elements in this film. And this one is quite different from Fury Road. That one is just escalating to this fever pitch. It's just screeching by the end of it, I feel like. And this one, it's a little bit slower, and it's opening up the world a little bit more, and it feels honestly more like a kind of like a personalized Odyssey epic. And thus we get to kind of look around and soak up the environments more, and the environments, they all feel aged into the wood of this entire saga, and it's beautiful. And if you are a huge fan of Fury Road, I think that you will at least appreciate a lot of what's going on in Furiosa, even if you may not like it to the same degree. Furiosa has its own qualities that separate it from Fury Road, but it does just capture the spirit for sure. It never loses the spirit of Mad Max. I can never get over the style of this world, and just the commitment to the artistry, the confidence with which they flaunt it is just, it's utterly fabulous. The world to me has just a spiritual beauty to it that is very clear, and it's at the core, even amidst all this kind of cranky, greasy, oily machinery that is all over. There's real dimension to the feelings and just the visuals in the movie that do give it that complexity, even when the story itself is very simple and a lot of the dialogue is actually quite minimal. Everything here does work like a heart, and all of the arteries that are kind of connected to it as it's pumping. It's seamless, it's original, it is everything that I wish that Denis Villeneuve's Dune series was and is not, at least in my opinion. This one is just so much more creative. It understands the spectacle, but also gets in there, and it has all of that guttural savagery to it at the same time. Whereas Dune is very expensive, and obviously there's an elegance to it, but it's so removed and so sterile that it feels like you're losing any real emotional connection that you could possibly have to the world or the characters. As if the actors were flown in on private jets just for their scenes, and then they're flown away. There's nothing really tactile to it, and it just feels like trying to get a good night's sleep in a room that is made fully of cold marble. I like how Furiosa kind of paints more like a slow picture. It's like a full historical background of this person. And then you get to Fury Road and it's like, we're gonna slam on that gas pedal, and it somehow all makes sense. And the style of the film, I could talk about it all day. It's like a weird melange of like steampunk and glam rock fabulousness. It looks like a Richard Amsel movie poster mixed with like Valhalla Rising. It's a world of excess, of course, and yet it never feels, vulgar, cheap in any sort of negative way, I think, for the audience. Everything that you're seeing on screen, every frame, it's all serving the story. Of course, I think the big question most people want to know is, how is the action? How are the action sequences, and how do they compare to Fury Road? And I think, obviously with Fury Road, you have like a near impossible standard to set, and I don't think you need to necessarily try to surpass it. And I don't think that the film was trying to like overshoot it or anything like that. Maybe it was, but I kind of more got the sense that it was more interested in that methodical approach. Yeah, and the movie, like the pacing of it reminded me more of like Lawrence of Arabia or like a Sergio Leone Western. And yes, of course, perhaps that is the desert aspect of it to a degree, but it did feel a bit pointed, even if I'm kind of being loose when I talk about Lawrence of Arabia. It's more like Larry and meets Hell's Angels. But don't misunderstand, this film is not quiet or subtle or anything like that. As I said before, it is still guttural, it is noisy, it is constantly accompanied, I feel like, by this like barrage of drums and engines. But no, the action sequences do not punctuate the film with the same boldness and brassiness as Fury Road. Fury Road is just, it's so abstract and so elevated as something very artistic and not of this world, and yet it does feel like you are plunged fully in the reality of it. And this, by comparison, is a lot more cartoonish. There's definitely more of a human element to Fury Road, whereas this one has, I would say, it's leaning more into the CGI, but it does have a combination of CGI and practical effects constantly. And to a degree, that is a complaint I have, that they're watering down, the humanistic qualities of it, because I do like a tactile quality to my movies almost always. But yet, at the same time, I could buy into this more than I might otherwise. It felt like I was looking at like the cover of a fantasy novel, but like it was in motion. Or again, one of those old like Amsel 1980s movie posters. It feels like one of those, but just in motion. It's that Nordic Conan the Barbarian type of thing. For me, the best part of the film is the first act, which, we're seeing Furiosa as a child, and we're seeing all of the trauma that she's endured to become the woman that she will eventually become. They do a really incredible job of combining the young actress who plays, young Furiosa, and they have her slowly transition digitally into Anya Taylor-Joy. That was almost seamless the way they did that. You can track that singular emotion, that fury in the eyes that is unmistakable in Anya, and it's always going to be a thread throughout the movie. The only thing is, it's not very seamless so far as, how we're going from Anya to Charlize Theron. That felt very abrupt. I'm not quite sure how I felt about that. But so far as going from the early years into the young womanhood, I just thought that was spectacular. And this sequence is so edge of your seat gripping. And the great thing I think about these movies is you don't necessarily have to have seen like Mad Max, any of the Mad Maxes, I don't think, and I don't think you have to have seen Fury Road before this one. Everything is so elaborate and well thought through, and therefore never incoherent, so you can just kind of plop right there and just be like, oh yeah, I'll just go along with this. I think Miller's the kind of guy who likes to do things like this with a little bit of blood on his hands, and I like artists who are willing to go there, willing to do things with a little bit of blood on their hands. I cannot stress to you enough just how hard it is to make a movie with this kind of passion when you have this kind of budget, when it's on this type of scale. This kind of money behind it, there's so much going into it. To have this kind of artistic, kind of aggressive quality to it, and to have that, again, that soul to it is just, it's fantastic. But Miller is an auteurist who just demands a boundless sense of imagination, and he does it all with conviction, whether it is Babe or, yes, the Mad Max world. For me, though, there is definitely a performance here that sticks out as the best one in the film, and no, it is not Anya Taylor-Joy. It is Chris Hemsworth, and he is playing Dr. Dementus. Of course, he's playing a villain, so it's supposed to be a very boastful, scene-chewing type of role, but of all the movies I have seen Chris Hemsworth do, this is by far the best performance he has ever given. It's that I think perfectly captures the essence of the Furiosa mood, the Furiosa movie. Obviously, we know that Hemsworth has amazing charisma. He has that movie star power, but he's also very funny as Thor. But this is like Thor, the wigged out psychedelic version. He's pushing himself. He's challenging all of those natural kind of effortless abilities he already has, but he's like ramming them. He's really getting some elbow grease in there. And he ends up creating a character that is menacing, very funny, obviously really charismatic, still has that kind of swagger, that star power, but he's also eccentric, and he delivers some of the best moments in the film. I'm not going to say he steals the film because, again, there's just so much here in the film. I don't think anybody's stealing anything from anyone, but when he's on screen, that's when we can really wring some of the emotion out, and especially in his final scene. There's some really, really strong acting going on there. I walked out of this movie more interested in Dr. Dementis than I was interested in Furiosa. And, you know, obviously we love when a villain does that. We love when a villain can be memorable like that. But it's also just great when you walk into a movie thinking that you're going to be on, you know, one character's side, but then, you know, someone else comes out of it and it's a pleasant surprise, kind of like Furiosa was for Mad Max Fury Road. I think that this movie demands to be seen on a big screen, the biggest screen you can, preferably in IMAX. Not a single frame or moment of this movie goes by where there is not, you know, full intent to stick the landing with flamethrowers. I am telling you, that is so, so, so rare in today's blockbusters. When you see this film, you're going to see an elevated, distinct difference between this one and all the rest of them that are out right now. I'm sorry to be cheesy, but yeah, this is why we go to the movies. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and yeah, I think you will too. But that is the review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits, and I sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below, and if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are great. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Welcome to all the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of all my social media information. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.